What do you think happens in terms of young people who could never afford to buy homes, or maybe weren't as interested in them, this millennial generation? At this point in time, you have these millennials who maybe weren't interested in owning homes, but then maybe we're starting to think about, they're starting to trade on Robinhood, maybe growing up a little bit. And then they get hit with a sick pandemic that kind of, after, maybe not even having the ability to participate in home ownership because their parents, did all, bought up all the inventory. So what happens to this next generation, do you think? Do you think about that ever?
All the time. We have a lot of millennial clients. So I think over half of our clients are between sort of 25 and 35.
Really?
And then, when you think about our registered users, and then another big chunk is 35 to 45. So it tends to skew younger. And 93% of our homes are sold to people who are buying out of state, and about 75% are first-time real estate investors. So it's with what we're seeing is a lot of millennials getting on the property ownership bandwagon where they don't live, and it's been a phenomenon of renting in an expensive city and buying these less expensive homes all over the country to start to build a portfolio, build some passive income and some exposure. What I'm seeing now is a lot of those people thinking about moving to places they might have bought a rental home and say, "Oh my God, I bought this rental home in Pittsburgh, and it's
dope."
Yeah, and I could go buy a home for $200,000 that is really nice, and I could work out of there. I think a lot of people are going back to be near family or near places that they might be familiar with, and they're discovering that they can have an amazing life just because the financial burden is so much less, and they get more space, and so it's a whole different pace. So I think you're going to continue to see a migration of younger people going to these secondary cities like the Pittsburghs or the Nashvilles or the Cincinnatis of the world, Kansas City, St. Louis, where you can go and have a great life and do your job. And so, but I do think that millennials like real estate, and based on our research, they trust a real estate investment a lot more than they trust the stock market. The trust in the stock market is generally inversely proportional to your age. So, it's fascinating.
That makes sense to me, because if you look at the stock market over multiple decades,
yes,
you feel very comfortable with it. But if you're only been an adult for half a decade or 1 decade, it's kind of hard to understand. I know I didn't get a full appreciation for it until after the dot-com bust. And when I had my second decade as an adult, when I was in my 30s or 40s, I was like, oh, stocks go up, but they also go down, but they overall go up. Yes. And they go up faster than other things. So you really want to have a blended portfolio.
And I hate to stereotype, but as a generation, one might say that they have a little ADD, right?
Yeah.
Having wanting this immediate result. Just everyone's used to having stuff on demand. So the idea that, over the next 20 or 30 years, you can count with, pretty great degree of certainty, the stock market's going to be significantly higher, but it may be really volatile and may go down 20%. That's not something, that sort of horizon, I think, is hard for a lot of
what people don't realize about that ADD thing. My friend Doug Rushkoff, the media theorist, he thought ADHD was something our generation, Gen X, had as a defense mechanism or adaptation to MTV and video games and screens just moving faster and faster, right? So we kind of got trained to think on our feet, move around a little bit more. And that's obviously continued with the smartphone generation. So therefore, that adaptation allows you to be less tied to one thing, and you get more exposure to many things, and you get more reps. So we thought staying in a job, I don't know, you're Gen X like me, I think. We thought you had to stay in a job a minimum of 4 years. If it was less than 4 years, it was like a blemish on your resume. And now you see, this generation is like, I stayed there 4 months because it wasn't right for me. I wasn't going to suffer for another 3.5 years. Fuck that. Like, I'm out. And so that actually gives them if they're screwing around with sports betting and then doing Robinhood or betting on crypto or betting on housing, they're going to get so many reps that they're going to become good at it quicker, because most old people are just like, I don't know anything about housing. I don't know anything about crypto. I don't know anything about stock market. I only know this.
Yeah, it's an interesting insight and perspective, more reps. I think that's right. I think a lot of times people are looking at a portfolio career today, not a job. People are doing lots of side hustles and investing in different things, trying different things, and moving around to a lot of jobs. I think you're right. I do think it's not always constructive when it comes to the career side, because I think sometimes the first 6 months to 12 months in a job, you're just learning and you're not generally all that effective. And then that next kind of 2-3 years, you could really crush it. And I think a lot of times people will give up too quickly and move for a title or move to another hot company. And they think they're progressing, and they may be progressing in title, but maybe not in skills and actual kind of a portfolio of work. And I think at some point that catches up with a lot of people, and they find themselves at a level where they're actually not as competent as they would have been had they stayed. Because it takes you time to build relationships and trust, learn the business. So that's one bit of counsel I always have for younger people I talk to, is think about the negative of that hopping around. Is you've got this kind of built-in equity, and I'm not talking about the financial equity you're building, but the social equity that you're building in your organization. And then you start to increasingly become more valuable and learn after that kind of first year.
I always tell people when they're coming to work for me, I expect 4 years. And are you prepared to do that? And here's the value of that: is you're going to get unbelievable opportunities and exposure. So we'll just keep pushing stuff on your plate. And for me, it's sort of like what you're saying. I think when your boss and the management trust you, you've now achieved like the really important thing, which is the next time something important comes along, they go, who did the last 2 important things? And how did that turn out? Oh, yeah, that kid who's been with us 18 months. Let's give him this really big, important thing that would be career-changing for him.
So I had a personal story. So first time I applied to business school, I just applied to Stanford, did not get in. I had 2 years of work experience. My boss said at the time, he goes, listen, you work for me for another year. I'll give you 2 projects to run. You've proven yourself, and reapply based on that additional experience. I got so much more experience in that 3rd year than I did in the first 2. I actually got to lead a couple projects, and I got in. So I ended up going to Stanford. And I could have gone to another school with 2 years of work experience if I was in a hurry to just go to business school. But that is kind of my point. I learned so much more in that 3rd year because I was actually reasonably competent and had built up enough internal trust to do that.